Jesus wept. I, on the other hand, just have a few questions. Question 1. Why do you feel that other people want you to apologize for being a cishet white man? I fit into about 3/4 of those demographics. Unfortunately, as a wee baby child, I was accidentally bitten by a radioactive drag queen. The good news is that I turned out to be just the right amount of fruity. The bad news is that the drag queen never fully recovered from the incident. I think the last Christmas card said that he went back to school for an accounting degree? All that aside, I have never personally felt guilty about how I was born, at least in terms of being a cis white man. There was a little bit back when I was, still in the closet about being guilty about being gay, but that's just a pretty common experience. I just popped into this world one day. I didn't come out of my mom knowing anything about anybody. But now that I'm an adult, I have to know about parts of the world that I don't like, not just the parts that I do. The world is shitty to people I care about, based on things entirely outside their control, and that means that I'm going to go up to bat for them in the ways that I can. I know that you think that every governmental or business organization in the world is kowtowing to marginalized groups. They aren't being as performatively cruel as you would like them to be. You're free to have that opinion, but it's very clearly conspiratorial thinking, and there's nothing anybody could say or do to meaningfully falsify that belief. Question number 2. Why do you think that all video games made recently share similar political viewpoints? I could see you having this opinion if you only play massive, big-budget AAA releases. Those are often designed by committee because those games do have a problem with politics. They try so hard not to have any opinion at all that they just end up becoming propaganda for the status quo. The Call of Duty franchise is a great example of this phenomenon. By making a quote-unquote unpolitical series of games, what they're actually doing is just legitimizing the violence that we experience in our day-to-day lives. Drone strikes used to be shocking in earlier Call of Duty titles. You could kill people from halfway across the world using a joystick. That's messed up, regardless of your political ideology. And the game presented that exactly. The missions themselves confronted the player with something that they couldn't just ignore. But now, they're just a kill streak. To be quite honest, if you think that the aggressively centrist opinions presented in these projects are somehow all radically leftist, that says a lot more about you than it does about them. Let's talk about how games this year have dealt with politics. Hi-Fi Rush and Shadows of Doubt are examples of games that have come out this year that have attempted to engage with the political themes of the cyberpunk genre. Hi-Fi Rush is actually a surprisingly pro-capitalist game, at least according to the text. Meanwhile, Shadows of Doubt has an opening cinematic that all but flat out states that capitalism has destroyed the world. During the course of gameplay, it only gets bleaker from there. However, from your perspective, here is why I think you might see these games as having the same politics. Hi-Fi Rush heavily implies a romance between Peppermint and Corsica, the two main female secondary characters of the game. And Shadows of Doubt has a non-binary option in the character creator, as well as many queer couples that the game can procedurally generate to fill the game world. You think that these games' politics are determined by aesthetics more than anything else. Anything that isn't the monochrome palette that you're expecting will make you chuck it into the woke bin, regardless of what the game is actually telling you to your face. When people critique Days Gone's protagonist for falling into a cliche like gruff white male protagonist, they usually aren't discounting it entirely based on its aesthetic. They just have seen that exact main character archetype through dozens of AAA games, and if they can't find a way to differentiate that character from all the other ones who fit the mold, it's going to be a downside for the game. Arthur Morgan is a gruff white male protagonist, and the reception for him has generally been extremely positive because Red Dead Redemption 2 competently tells his story in an interesting way and allows him to have a personality beyond empty machismo. The gaming industry does not hate straight white men, and it does not hate conservatives. If you have been convinced that this is the case, the most charitable interpretation I have is that you are a rube who is being taken advantage of. The cases that you mention of people being fired seem to me to be bog-standard firings that the aggrieved parties blame on cancel culture instead of their own actions and their consequences. Question 3. Are you aware that not all critique has to be a personal attack against the project? Elden Ring is a masterpiece, but I can see some truth to what the author of the Polygon article said about how women are portrayed in From Software games. There is very much a level up maiden / final boss binary that's going on with quite a few women in the game. This is especially true for Mileena, Ranni, Rennala, and Malenia. I always have trouble differentiating between Mileena and Malenia whenever I'm talking to anybody. I am so sorry. Rennala especially seems to be a great example of this kind of trope in action, because she starts off as literally an area boss that you have to beat rationality back into in order for her to help you on your quest. She goes from area boss to respec mummy. And I feel like that's a good example of the trope. I don't think that's something that ruined my enjoyment of the game at all, but I think that it might be a sign that From Software could benefit from maybe changing up their style a little, putting more emphasis on women in their stories who are a bit more complicated than just swapping from direct benefit to direct obstacle. I honestly think that they made some progress in it in Elden Ring. Fia the Deathbed Companion and Nefeli Loux are both examples of characters who might be a pretty good step in that direction. I just think that they didn't get the spotlight that they deserved compared to some of the more prominent characters who you end up fighting. You can love something and want to analyze it. Even if the analysis might be revealing how some aspects of what you love may be problematic or not the best, it's okay to like what you like. Game design is an iterative process. So is writing, so are a lot of things in this life. And the way that iterative processes work to make something better is that when you show them to the public, you talk about them. You dive into them. You see what makes it tick. And even if I disagree with some of the points the Polygon author made, she was engaging with the subject material. Also, I really do not care about Far Cry. Any number of Far Cry. As, like, a me thing. Considering that you never once directly quote the author's actual word or link to the article, I don't think that you're representing their work very well, but I'm not going to go through and read that because I, again, do not give a shit about Far Cry. Question number 4? You think people who play FemShep and date Liara in Mass Effect are doing it for pervy reasons? That is a take, I guess. Alright, look, let me level with you here. Jennifer Hale's performance makes her version of Commander Shepard the best version of Commander Shepard. Liara has a really fun character arc through the series that makes the romance that's going on between her and Shepard feel like it's on equal footing in ways that the others don't. She's the goddamn Shadow Broker by Mass Effect 3. That's an interesting dynamic. There's a reason why Liara is one of the most iconic characters of the series, and why Ashley and Kaidan never left their flop era. Ashley spent the first game being racist, and Kaidan had all the personality of a cardboard cutout. I can guarantee you that the reason why there wasn't a male-male romance in the first Mass Effect game was not because it would be out of character for M. Shep to be gay. They knew that a lesbian romance would not cause as much backlash from people like you, because you don't really mind homosexuality, as long as it's the kind of homosexuality you can jack off to. It was purely a decision to avoid people like you being creeps in their general vicinity. Was it bad representation? Kind of, but it's certainly better than nothing for 2007. And now, to interrupt the previously established format of the video, for a tangent that's not really a question. Will from Stranger Things being gay does not stop the story from being about friendship. Gay people still have friends. Will has a crush on Mike for right now. Big whoop. Teens of all sorts get crushes on their friends all the time. Will being gay was literally implied since the first season. His dad did all the stereotypical homophobic dad who hates his gay son things in that one scene with Joyce, except for calling Will the F-slur to his face. That is, in terms of coding, that's not really even coding. That's just text. And we're back to question 5. Do you think people who are different from you don't want to make and play video games? Look, queer people have been making your comic books, TV shows, music, movies, and, yes, video games, since people can make any of those things. The same is true for people of every quote-unquote vocal minority group that you want to out and out dismiss because they don't share your ridiculous mayonnaise sensibilities. You want us out of the arts? Better men than you have tried, and better men than you have failed hilariously. I think that it's sad that you refuse to take responsibility for your own thoughts and opinions. I think it's pitiful you've embraced a reactionary mindset that lets you think that you have the safety of childhood and all the freedoms of an adult. But here's the problem. Your mindset doesn't account for responsibilities to other people. And for a grown-ass man, that is not going to cut it. There's a whole universe of great video games out there, and yet you are here, stuck 20 years in the past, demanding everybody else cater to your aesthetic tastes, because you want to pretend to be a kid again. Because, I guess, the world's too much for you. The world's too much for everyone. Come on, dude. I don't know if you've noticed this, but at least where I'm from, a single injury, even if they fully recover from it, can ruin the rest of somebody's life because of medical debt. The United States is one of the most wealthy nations on the face of the planet, and people still die of fully preventable diseases, fully treatable diseases. You will be affected by the failings of the system during your lifetime if you are an American. It's not a guess, it's a fact. The way things are right now will hurt you. So, you can either want to change it for the better, or die in a state of stasis, having changed nothing of relevance at all. I know that's depressing, but we all have to deal with it. You gotta buck up and deal with it too. I don't know what else to say. Although, I guess what I have to say, really, is that if you have a day job, don't quit it.